every woman should have the opportunity or chance or offered a chance to try home birth, whether they're low risk or high risk, because we don't have a ruler of like how low risk are you? Oh, how high risk are you? And birth is very unpredictable. So, you know, even even for women who have um twins, breech baby, gestational diabetes, GBS positive, you are
Mhm.
still a good candidate for home birth. Home birth is still an option for you.
Yeah.
So if any women have a tug towards home birth, I would say try it out. Try it out and just trust in your body and your ability to give birth.
Hey, you're listening to Empowered Births at Home with me, Esmeralda, the home birth doula, as your host. I am a mama of three, fellow home birther, and entrepreneur. I am completely obsessed with birth, more specifically, home birth. And this is a podcast where women share their empowering home birth stories, along with the journey that led them down the path to home birth. Whether you're currently pregnant, planning a home birth with your first or fourth baby, or even just someone who is a complete birth nerd like me, this is the podcast for you. So let's get into this week's empowering home birth story. We are on episode 37 today. We'll be chatting with Brigitta, who will be sharing her home birth story with us. Let's go ahead and bring Brigitta on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brigitta, and I am living in Minnesota right now in Shakopee. I am a new mama. My first daughter, firstborn, was born back in April 2024, and I have a background in nutrition and food science, a
Mhm.
master's degree from the University of Minnesota. But shortly after my daughter was born, I decided to quit my corporate food scientist job and become a stay-at-home mom and also a doula.
Wow, that's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
And so, what kind of sparked the idea of having your first at home?
Yeah, so I always see birth as a natural event.
Mhm.
I'm a Christian Catholic, and so I view birth as this miraculous sacred event.
Mhm.
And I believe that, God created me as a woman wonderfully made for birth. And I believe all women are wonderfully made for birth. And so I just really wanted to have a natural birth. And then a friend of mine who was pregnant at that time, she was planning to have a home birth with a midwifery.
Mhm.
And so I learned home birth from her, and my husband and I did our own research and fell in love with home birth and the idea of
Yeah.
just giving birth at home and not having to go anywhere. So that's how home birth came up. It's funny because before we decided to go full on home birth, we actually went to an OB at our local hospital and stayed under her care for 20 weeks of my pregnancy before switching to my
Okay.
midwifery.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Okay. And really quickly, I do just want to go back. Do you think that the way that you viewed birth was because of your upbringing, or was there a certain way that maybe your mom portrayed it or people around you portrayed birth?
Yeah, it's funny because it's it's rooted deeply in my faith, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
my mom actually had C-sections
Okay.
for me and my younger sister, and she actually wanted or suggested me to go with the C-section route
Okay.
because I think she viewed C-section as like safer or easier quote
Mm.
unquote option. And when I told her that I wanted to do home birth, she freaked out,
Yeah.
naturally, understandably. And yeah, she freaked out and she had like worries for me because I am her daughter. But, like she asked me, what if something happened? What if something, what if there's an emergency and the baby is, everything. And so that kind of got to me the like the first 20 weeks basically when I was under my OB care. Um, but then I thought to myself that, well, most interventions, most emergencies happen at the hospital. And so I'm just going to avoid it all at once and um, do home birth.
Yeah, that's awesome and very interesting because I feel like that kind of happened to me too. But
Yeah.
my first was not a home birth. I did have a hospital with my first, but I didn't grow up with anyone telling me that like birth was just a normal event, birth was safe. I grew up with it being like, oh, it's dangerous, it needs to be in a hospital.
Mhm.
But I always had a feeling inside of me of like, but we were made to do this. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense to me that it's
Yeah.
dangerous and that it's like an emergency. It just didn't kind of sit with me the right way. And I didn't understand why, especially with how my hospital birth unfolded until afterwards when I got into the home birth world. Then it all made sense as to why, like, it wasn't clicking for me in the hospital. And so, yeah, I kind of had that like deep intuition feeling too of like, we were made to do this. We were made to give birth. It is a sacred event. And like, it's just natural. It's what's supposed to happen.
So, did you know home birth um, during your first pregnancy?
I did, but not to the extent of how different they were. I thought that you could kind of have like a home birth in the hospital and
Mhm.
you could just have like a different birth location if you birth at home, that it would be like the same type of birth. I didn't know that they were complete opposites of each other and
Yeah.
like how it's harder to have a physiological birth in the hospital and it's so much easier at home. I didn't really understand like all of the differences. I just knew it was an option. But I didn't really look into it as much because I was living with my in-laws at the time. And so I kind of was like, oh, I'm not gonna like invade their space with my birth. Like that's their home. I'm gonna maybe do that when we have our own home. But I
Okay.
didn't really like dig into it, and that's why I didn't know there was a huge difference. If
Right.
I did know, I think I would have pushed like, can we use your house for our birth?
Yeah.
If I would have known the difference, I would have asked. But I thought, like, oh, I could have a home birth in the hospital. That's what I'm gonna do. And that's what I thought would happen, but it didn't.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, definitely. So that's really interesting, though, that you just kind of knew, like, deep down and in your faith that, like, that's what we were
Yeah.
made for.
Yeah. And I think the more my mom pushed back,
Hmm.
the more I felt challenged and the more I wanted to prove her wrong. Like,
Yeah.
let me show you how birth should be like, how birth should be embraced, how women should be treated um,
Hmm.
during pregnancy and birth. So,
Yeah,
mhm.
definitely. And so when you finally switched over from your OB to midwifery, what was like the final thing that made you switch, or did you know all along that you were going to switch?
Yeah, I I knew all along that at some point I was gonna switch.
Mhm.
So I think at 15 weeks, we went to the midwifery. We did their free consultation and we signed up right away under their care. So for like 5 weeks or so, we had we had double cares basically under OB and under midwife. Um, and the reason why I was still clinging to that OB care was because of two reasons. So the first one was insurance. My insurance was covered my hospital, whereas the midwifery was not covered by any insurance at all.
Mhm.
So my insurance covered the appointments at the hospital with OB and all of the lab testing, which was super nice. And the second reason was, because of that mindset of like, what if something goes wrong? What if
Mhm.
all of the what if scenarios? So
Yeah.
I was like clinging on to ropes.
Hmm.
And it was right after my 20-week ultrasound, right before my gestational diabetes test, that we decided to like, okay, what's really happening? What is my goal here? Home birth or hospital? Choose one. And then we decided to like, just let go and stick with the midwifery.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's awesome. For your like planning beforehand and prepping for the home birth, was there anything specifically you remember doing to prepare for that?
I remember reading a lot of books. The Birth Partner was one.
Mm,
Um, Made for This by Mary Hasseltine. She is also a Catholic. She wrote this pregnancy, birth, postpartum book for Christian women, and I highly recommend it to women out there who are pregnant and expecting. So I read that. I also read Ina May's Guide to Natural Birth. Yes, that one. And what else did I? Oh, Gentle Birth and Gentle Parenting.
mm.
I was so deep into like all of the science, the nitty-gritty, because I have a research background. And we attended Alma Parenting Childbirth course as well. We also watched some home birth YouTube videos. So we did a lot of preparation to make sure that we are as prepared as we can be for home birth.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Those are all amazing books that you
I know.
stated. So yeah, those are really good books to read.
Oh, and I also listened to Happy Home Birth podcast. That was my
Yes.
main podcast.
Hmm. Yep.
Mhm.
That one is very well known and a great podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all awesome. That's great. And so leading up to the birth, how did labor kind of start for you?
It was funny because I I got into labor on Wednesday, April 9th. Yes. And then on Tuesday, the day before, it was actually my last appointment with the midwife.
Mm.
I was at 39 weeks, and we talk about ways to naturally induce potentially. And we talk about all of the ways, the pineapple, dates, talk about primrose oil, mild circuit, everything. And then from that appointment, I went home and I was like, I'm gonna try everything because because like in my head, I don't want to go to 41 weeks and have to transfer care, blah blah blah. And then so I tried, yeah, on Tuesday night before bed, I tried primrose oil. So I used one capsule and I put it right at the opening of my cervix. And I could feel that, my cervix was already very, very soft. And we went to bed at 9 p.m. And then at midnight, I woke up with like feeling of contractions, but I was like, meh, it was Braxton Hicks. I thought it was Braxton Hicks. And I needed to go to the bathroom. So I went to a bathroom to pee and I saw Bloody Show, which was very exciting. I was very excited, Bloody Show. And then I went back to bed, but I couldn't because the contractions just won't go away.
Yeah.
And I was like, hang on a minute. I feel like there's a pattern here. And I tried to time it. I downloaded a timer app and
Mhm.
it was 811 at that point.
Okay.
So it was like 1 a.m. And then at 1:40 a.m., my husband woke up because of my phone, the glaring screen. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've been having contractions and it's 811." And then he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he downloaded the app too. And then from then on, he timed it for me.
Okay.
And then at 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m., we decided to call our doula and notify her that, hey, we've been having some contractions. And then 3 a.m., we decided to, it's still fresh in my memory. At 3 a.m., we decided to notify our midwife. So we called her and she was super calm. And I was like, hey, we're having contractions, 811. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, since it's still 811 and you're a first time mom, I would recommend you get some rest, try to go back to sleep, take a Benadryl. And I was like, okay. And then
Mhm.
we tried to sleep. I tried going back to sleep, but I just couldn't because it was intense enough that I couldn't fall back to sleep.
Yeah.
And so at 4 a.m., our doula called again to check on us. And then she's like, well, can you sleep? And I told her I cannot sleep. And so she told us to like, okay, maybe it's time to get up and move around the house and do no, not active labor, do some early labor activities. And so we decided to do that. I made some tea. I pulled out our jigsaw puzzle that we planned to do together. At that time, it was around 5:30 a.m. and my contractions were getting closer to 7,611, 711, 611.
Yeah.
And I looked at the puzzle and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna do this because the contractions were too distracting for me at that point.
Mhm.
And so I just decided to go downstairs to our basement bedroom and, sat on the birth ball, doing stretches, swaying. And then our doula came to our house at 6:30 a.m. And at that point, my contractions were 511, 411. So it's getting close pretty quick, like steadily.
Mhm.
And then everything went well. I could still talk in between my contractions.
Mm.
And then I notified my midwife again, hey, it's like 311 at this point. It was 7 a.m., 7:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And so not the doula, the midwife decided to stop by to our house to check on me and to assess the situation. And when she came in, she did a cervical check on me,
Mm.
but I didn't want to know. So she told my doula, but not me. Lo and behold, I was still 3 centimeters, almost 4 centimeters. So she's like, my midwife told me to get some rest, lay down, try to get some sleep. And I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot. And then she decided to leave for another, I think, client house visit.
Mm.
Um, and between that 7:30, between 7:30 and 9:30 a.m., it was transition, pushing, and baby. So
Wow.
my total labor birth was 9.5 hours.
Mhm.
And it was quick for a first time mom.
Yeah.
And we accidentally did a free birth because the midwife
Mm.
missed the birth by like 5 minutes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. And that really goes to show like some people really rely on cervical checks. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I need my cervix checked. I need to know where I'm at. I need to know how much time I have left. And it's like, really, it's not going to tell you anything. It's not going
Yeah.
to tell you if you're super close, if you're super far, because you can go from a three to pushing in just a few
Yeah.
hours. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to tell you anything at all. And that's why I really am like not against cervical checks, but more just like it's not really needed. You don't
Yeah.
really need to have any of them, especially if you don't want them or you're feeling uncomfortable with them or they're distracting you or anything like that. Or even if you feel like it's going to discourage you, because especially for you, you probably were like, oh, I'm only at a 3 and it's feeling like this intense or like they're this close together. I probably have like 20 more hours of this, so you
Yeah.
probably felt discouraged. But really, it's like not going to tell you anything, so there's no reason to get discouraged over it because you could have a baby really soon after. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out in your story
Yeah.
because that's really awesome that you progressed so fast.
Yeah. We so we were planning to have a water birth. We had water birth pool,
Mhm.
but it was still empty. And it
Yeah.
was empty all throughout
Mhm.
our labor and birth because it was so quick and all of us were in denial. And I did not get the water birth that I wanted.
Mhm.
I delivered on all fours right next to the empty birth pool on the tarp,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Yeah. And it just goes to show that you can only prepare so much for birth, but you can never predict the outcome of your birth.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's also something that I say is that birth is so unpredictable. Like we can plan all we want. We can make these birth plans. We can like write down everything that we think is going to happen or that we want to happen, but birth can go just any way that it wants to, and it'll just happen the way that it happens. And so it's good to, yes, know what you want, and like if there's maybe certain things we could do to prepare for you to have the birth that you're kind of wanting, but also be okay with the fact that it might not even go that way, and it could go a complete opposite way, and still be okay with that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Totally.
Yeah, that's amazing. For the transition phase, how did that look for you? How did you handle that, especially with your midwife not being there? How did that look?
So that 2 hours between 7:30 to 9:30, it was just constant going back and forth between bedroom and bathroom because I just felt the urge to poop. Like, oh,
Mm,
I think I need to poop. And then waddling back and forth. And it was a quest just
mm,
walking to the bedroom to bathroom. They were just like 8 feet apart, but I would have like two contractions one way and then two contractions the other way.
okay.
So constant back and forth, and my contractions were just getting stronger and closer apart. And I was moaning the whole time. I was so loud. And I could tell, and my doula also could tell that I was progressing. Like something is happening
Yeah.
fast, pretty fast. And I sounded like I was in transition, but I was in denial. My doula was in denial.
Hmm.
And but my doula called the midwife again because she felt like she had to.
Yeah.
And my midwife listened to a couple of my contractions, and my midwife, she said, "Yeah, I can tell that something is different, but I was just there 30 minutes ago." And so she was also in denial, which is understandable.
Hmm.
And throughout that time, I was having like more mucus plug coming out, more bloody show. And then my midwife on over the phone, she suggested my doula to do a rebozo
Mm.
thing on me. So we did that. I was on all fours on my elbow, and then she did the sifting. And right away, uh, maybe over two contractions, I felt an urge to push, like my body just pushed. I had the fetal ejection reflex.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah.
And then I didn't say anything because I was such in denial. Like it shouldn't happen right now, right? It's
Hmm.
only like 8 hours. And I was like, I need to poop again. And so I got up, and as I got up, suddenly I felt that ring of fire.
Mm.
I did not feel any pelvic pressure at all, but I
Okay.
did feel the ring of fire, and I was like, ow. And then I was holding on to my husband, And when I felt that ring of fire, I like smack him on the shoulder. I was like, oh, slap. And then my doula saw that and she was like, whoa, that is definitely like transition.
Hmm.
And and then we walk to the bathroom because I felt like I need to poop.
Yeah.
I sat down in the toilet and something came out, but it was not poop. It was my daughter crowning. And I was like, she is crowning. And my doula looked down and she said, oh, yep, she is crowning. Let's walk back to the room. And so I was waddling with like a crowning baby um, back to the room. And then my doula said, okay, do you on all fours here on the tarp? And I did on all fours. And right away, her head came out. It did not hurt. It was, yeah, it did not hurt at all. The crowning, the head coming out, and then it was silence. Like my body gave me a couple seconds to breathe, and then another contraction came, and then her whole body came out.
Yeah.
And so my doula and my husband caught the baby.
Hmm.
Then after that, there was 5 minutes of just silence because all three of us were in shock.
Yeah.
Then, and then later on, we heard the midwife came rushing in. Yeah.
Do you know about how long after the birth she came?
I think it was like 5 or 8 minutes because
Okay.
the midwife, she timed the birth, which was 9:22 a.m., and she timed it when she was driving.
Mm. Was she
And
on the phone?
yeah, she's on the phone.
Okay.
And then when she got here, my husband looked at the his phone and it was 9:30. So
Mm.
8 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Was your husband kind of freaking out at all, or he didn't show it at all?
No, he didn't show it at all. He was super calm.
Okay.
He um he was not terrified at all.
Mm.
He saw the whole thing. Um and after birth, I asked him, how he felt about everything, whether he was in shock or, traumatized. And he said, no, everything looked normal to me.
Hmm.
And um, he felt like there was nothing that he should be anxious about or worry about because we have the doula and the midwife taking care of me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and he was supportive. He was holding me. He was holding my hands, rubbing my back. Yeah, it was super
Yeah.
great.
That's amazing. And so, how did the postpartum period go? Like immediately after when the midwife was there?
So the midwife, right after birth, I had a deep second-degree tear because she came out so quick.
Hmm.
And so she stitched me up and she told me to basically stay in bed for 2 weeks. Um, and she cleaned everything up, the sheets, deflated the unused birth pool. And then she made like a warm water sits bath for me to sit on and pee for the first time after. And she gave us a couple of, very direct, quick, brief tips on how to take care of baby and take care of, me after. And then she's gone. And then after that, the doula left too. And so it was just me and my husband and our baby, and we're all alone. Yeah, it was a bit terrifying to feel like, oh, the midwife trusts us to be
Hmm.
able to take care of our baby. Yeah. But To be honest, postpartum recovery was harder than I thought because of my tear.
Mm,
It was hard for me to like sit up
yeah.
in bed. And then my daughter also had tongue tie and lip tie. So we had to do a release. And
Mm,
so breastfeeding the first 3, 4 weeks was was not easy at all.
yeah,
hmm
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's so like I just loved your story so much. It was amazing and hearing how like fast it progressed and how confident you were in just your body. It was just also amazing. I loved it.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I was very confident with birth, but I think I wish I prepped more for postpartum recovery too, because I just didn't know what to expect as a first time mom. So,
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. I
yeah.
feel like that is a big part, especially in our society today, that is very missed. Um, Even though like birth isn't in like mainstream society taught properly, it's still like taught to, oh, you need to learn about like birth or you need to take a birth class, you need to prepare for the birth. Everybody still plans for that. But no one talks about postpartum. No one talks about how to kind of put in systems into place and how to prepare yourself for that time. And you just kind of feel like how you said, like, okay, now it's up to me, and I'm here with the baby, and I am alone and don't know what to do now. And that's not how it's supposed to be. Like, if you think about how it was back like hundreds of years ago, it was all the women in the community being there for the mother and like holding the mother so that the mother could hold the baby
Yeah.
and taking care of her so she could take care of the baby. But in today's society, it's not like that at all. And there's no systems put in place for that unless you physically go and put those systems in place, which we're not told to do. So we don't even know that we're supposed to do that. And so, yeah, we're just left alone to take care of ourselves and our baby. And it's like a lot for us to handle. And we're like, why is this so hard? And then we're wondering why moms go into postpartum depression or get postpartum anxiety. And it's like, because we're supposed to be taken care of in postpartum. We're supposed to have our family around or just other women, friends around that are helping us, but we're not told that in our society. So nobody really knows that that's what's supposed to happen or that's what we're supposed to do. And yeah, it's just very unfortunate, but hopefully I think we're going in the path of now like everything for physiological birth is coming out and also for preparing for postpartum. Like postpartum doulas are becoming more known and more of like a thing that people are talking about to get, or even just having family prepare things. Like I've been seeing a lot of people do the
Yes.
nesting party where like they prepare everything for postpartum and those are becoming more popular. So it's like I see it becoming more of a thing now, which is really good, but we're still not there yet where it's like normal.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. Fortunately for us, my parents, they flew over all the way from Indonesia. They flew over here and they stayed with us for 40 days, 43 days.
Mm,
So they help us, cook, clean the house, do our laundry. Um, and having them as company was really helpful because,
mhm.
there were other people besides my husband that I can talk to and interact with, and they helped with taking care of baby Rose whenever I'm done breastfeeding or whenever I needed some time to do sits bath and
Okay.
a warm bath. And my husband's parents they live close by, so they
Mm,
also like stop by our house a couple of times during early postpartum and help us out. Meal train is was very helpful as well for us. We have
yes.
several friends dropping food for us. Yeah, which was very nice of them. And then yeah, but I didn't know that postpartum was that hard. I knew that I would need to give myself grace, give myself time to heal. But the physical recovery really impacted my mental,
Mhm.
like my mental state, like feeling feeling like I was alone. Um, I needed to take care of my baby. I felt like I couldn't do this alone. I didn't know what to do, like all of the mental burdens.
Yeah.
It's really weighing on me. And and so it took me by surprise because I've seen left and right, like women after birth, they went back to work 6 weeks after.
Mhm.
They do all of these exercises after, and they look fine. They
Mhm.
look fine, they look healthy, they look cheerful, um, maybe on social media. And so I didn't think that it was going to be hard.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely can see that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leading into what you do now, you're a postpartum doula, right? So
Mhm.
is that
Birth and
birth and
postpartum.
postpartum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did that kind of lead you to that journey, like your
Yes.
postpartum?
Yes. So I was discerning to be a doula at the towards the end of my pregnancy because I had done a lot of research, a lot of reading. So I took the training through Madriella Network to become certified doula. And shortly after she was born, I think 2 months after, I got certification for birth and postpartum doula. So I'm a very new doula
Mhm.
as of spring 2024. Yes, but that really sparked my own experience really sparked my passion for becoming a doula because I want to help other women be confident for birth, especially helping them have a Christ-centered support, Christ-centered or faith-filled birth. And I also want to help prepare them to face postpartum and
Yeah.
not only to survive postpartum but to thrive during postpartum.
That's really beautiful and very similar to kind of my story too, where
Mhm.
right after my home birth, I right away like went on to my doula training and did it during my postpartum because I knew during that time would be like the best time where my baby is just sleeping most of the time and like on me. And so I took an online course where I was just like on my computer with my newborn baby. And like 2 months after is when I got my certificate. So
Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
so very similar.
congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, mine
And
was
now,
in a few years ago, but yeah, same story.
and now, fast forward, you are the home birth doula. That is
Yeah,
so
it's
great.
crazy. For anyone who is in your area or just wants to kind of find you and your services, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me I have a website. It's called thedailyroses.com. The name Daily Roses is because my daughter's name's Rose, and I just love the name, the plant rose. It has like the flowers and the thorns. It's kind of like the ups and downs of life. Anyway, thedailyroses.com, or they can find me on Instagram at the_dailyroses.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. I'll go ahead and leave those links below so anyone who wants to find you can do that. And is there anything else you want to kind of leave us with? Maybe just like one last statement.
I do believe that every woman should have the opportunity or chance or offered a chance to try home birth, whether they're low risk or high risk, because we don't have a ruler of like how low risk are you? Oh, how high risk are you? And birth is very unpredictable. So, you know, even even for women who have um, twins, breech baby, gestational diabetes, GBS positive, you are
Mhm.
still a good candidate for home birth. Home birth is still an option for you. So
Yeah.
if any women have a tug towards home birth, I would say try it out. Try it out and just trust in your body and your ability to give birth.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's awesome. It's like people hear high risk and they automatically slap it as like an emergency.
Right?
But that's not always the case. High risk label is not always an emergency. And so if you kind of find the right providers, maybe the right midwife who is willing to work with you, they would let you know if it does become an emergency. And
Right.
then they would advise you to go to the hospital. So yeah, definitely home birth is always an option until it becomes an emergency and it isn't an option. It's not always just that high risk label is keeping you away from home birth. That's not always true.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing everything with us. It was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share with any family or friends who may benefit from these empowering stories. Also, don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and review to help others who are searching for this information find this podcast. I'll see you next week for another empowering home birth story.